98.3 FM.
Welcome on board the Morning Express.
Good morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. The most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
Welcome to the Morning Express on Mainland 98.3 FM.
Good morning and welcome to Trends in the Papers on Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. Well, time check right now is 7:42 a.m. It's time for us to look at the major trending stories on the front pages of our papers. And we have our papers, of course, with us, the Punch, the Guardian and Vanguard newspaper in no particular order. Well, the major story that trended over the weekend, before we get into the crux for today, of course, is the protest, the End Bad Governance protest across the country. The major headline on the front page of Weekend Guardian said, 2 days gone, 8 days more glimpses of national protest. And whether or not it's going to, go ahead or whether or not it's still going to continue is something that we're definitely going to be looking at this morning. But of course, that was the major, conversation across board. We also have, on Saturday Punch, military threatens to intervene as police crack down on protesters. There were arrests of some protesters in different parts of the country. Aside from that, how hunger protests exposed our growing divisions. That's an expose by Saturday Vanguard. Day 2, protest fire seemed to be fizzling out, and that was as Saturday. But then, of course, from yesterday, after the presidential speech from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, there seemed to be some sort of agreement, we'll put it that way, from some of the protesters, especially here in Lagos and some other parts of the country, as regards whether or not the protest would continue into today, which happens to be day 5. Whether or not the protest will continue, we'll definitely see and continue to observe. But for this morning, let's see what we have here. We have our Punch newspaper. The major headline there reads, "Hunger protest. Tinubu's speech attracts knocks and kudos." Yesterday was quite an amazing time on political roundtable with Said Fuad, Mr. Curtis Adigba, and Olalekan Oni, where we looked, dug deep, very, very deep into the president's speech yesterday morning. A lot of takeaways, but of course, I think the major takeaway from that particular speech, just in case you didn't, listen to it, we have the president acknowledged the turmoil and violent protests and expressed a heavy heart and sense of responsibility. He also commiserated with the families of those who lost their lives during the protests. He called for an end to further bloodshed, violence, and destruction. He enjoined protesters to suspend further protests and create room for dialogue. He warned those taking advantage of the situation to threaten any section of the country that the law will catch up with them. He reiterated his vision for a just and prosperous Nigeria where every person can enjoy peace, freedom, and a meaningful livelihood. Highlighting the progress made in rebuilding the foundation of the economy, the president mentioned increased government revenue, reduced debt service from 97% to 68%, cleared outstanding foreign exchange obligations, increased financial freedom for state and local government, and embarked on major infrastructure projects. Announcing initiatives to empower the youth, he mentioned the student loan scheme, Consumer Credit Corporation, Digital and Creative Enterprises Program, Skill Up Artisans Program, SUPER, National Youth Academy, NIA, National Youth Talent Export Program, NATEP. He also discussed efforts to stimulate economic growth, which includes micro and small business loans, nano grants for nano businesses, support for farmers to increase food production, removal of tariffs and import duties on essential items. And he also emphasized the importance of working together to build a higher future for Nigeria. And finally, he concluded by saying or by urging security operatives to maintain peace and order while respecting human rights. Those were the highlights from the president's nationwide broadcast yesterday, which was, broadcast live here on Mainland 98.3 FM. Yes. All right. Moving into, of course, reactions from the president's speech and also the aftermath of the protest, whether it will continue or not continue. Let's dig deep into today's papers. My name is Omobola Sandra. I will not be doing this alone. Fuad Sahid will join via the phone line to give analysis to the stories that we're going to be treating this morning. But before then, today happens to be the birthday of a dear colleague of ours here, and that is Hamida Adedoyin, who anchors our Yoruba programs, or one of our Yoruba anchors right here on Mila 98.3 FM. She co-anchors the Agbo show with Mama Rimpo on Saturday morning, and she's also a senior commercial officer here at Milan FM, and we're wishing you happy birthday, Hamida Adedoyin. Have fun, enjoy, and may the blessings of God follow you all the days of your life. Now, I'm just going to put that have fun. I wanted to ask something else, but then I will see that. We'll see it later in the office, and we'll see how that will pan out. Well, let's have Fuhad join via the phone line as we dig deep into the major stories for this morning. I'll kick things off with the Punch newspaper. As I mentioned earlier on, the major headline there reads, Hunger protest, Tinubu's speech attracts knocks and kudos. And we have riders that says Soyinka and PDP slam president's address. NGO and others hail it. Protest organizers demand 1,150 detainees release. Good morning, Fuad. How are you doing?
Good morning, Sandra. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you very much. How is the road this morning? Is there any clustering anywhere?
Not for now. The road is clear and no issues for now. But of course, I think normalcy has returned to most parts of Lagos from the airport to get. People are back to work, offices are resumed, and I think more businesses are open. As against what we saw from Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Yes. I think normalcy has gradually returned, but we'll wait to see if there's going to be any build up, depending on what happens later on in the day.
All right. Well, thank you very much. What the report we're getting now is the protest organizers in Lagos had written to the police that they were shelving the protest for today. I don't know, but then of course, as the day goes on, we'll get updates as regards.
There was an issue yesterday. I think it was even the protesters and told them it was time to go home. After that, then these hoodlums came and attacked the protesters and the protesters. Again, there are questions as to why that actually happened. Why it was in the place to see hoodlums start to attack some of the protesters. It was captured on TV and it was also widely reported. We also have people on ground who told us that it was a very terrible thing.
There's someone that called me yesterday that mentioned a stabbing. Yes.
And what else? Again, a lot to talk about as to what has happened from Thursday till now and going forward. Professor Wole Soyinka issued a statement yesterday saying that, look, he felt disappointed that the president did not address the conduct of police officers who were too high-handed, were harassed protesters and even shot at protesters. From instance, their guards there. Basically, what he was saying is that, look, people cannot be demanding for bread and you give them bullets. The Nigerians, the hungry Nigerians who are out there protesting were actually demanding for bread. Instead, they got bullets in return, and he expected the president to have condemned that, considering his own background too, an antecedent as a protester in several instances. But again, we'll dig deeper into the story as taken from the papers.
All right. Thank you very much. Time check right now is 7:51 a.m. and you are listening to Mainland 98.3 FM. This is Trends in the Papers. We'll be looking through the major trending stories on the front pages of our papers this morning. Let's go back to the major headline on the front page of the Punch, which read, of course, hunger protest, 17 feared killed as firms and others count huge losses. We have riders here. 10 killed in Niger, Borno, 7 in Kano. Others, federal government complex looted. APC secretariat. Oh no, apologies. I think I was taking something else there. Yes. All right. Yes, Tinubu's speech attracts knocks and kudos. Yes, apologies for that. Okay, so Soyinka PDP slam president's address. NGO and others hail it as protest organizers demand 1,150 detainees released. The report reads, the organizers of the End Bad Governance protest have demanded the release of 1,150 protesters allegedly arrested by the police during the first 3 days of the nationwide rallies. And in response to the appeal by the president to end the protest, which has claimed several lives, the organizers, Take It Back Movement, Youth Rights Campaign, and the Creative Change Center, in separate interviews, vowed to carry on with the demonstration, stating that Tinubu did not address their demands in his Sunday morning national broadcast. The president called for dialogue and an immediate end to the nationwide protests that have rocked the nation since Thursday. Protesters, largely youths, have been marching across several states, including, of course, Lagos. Tear gas and gunshots were fired to disperse protests and journalists in Abuja. There were several arrests made as well by security operatives on Saturday. The protests were also marked by reported lootings by hoodlums in Kano, Kaduna, and other northern states, with the police going after the culprits to, of course, retrieve the items. However, the president, who said his administration was ready to listen and address the concerns, claimed he has heard their calls loud and clear. I highlighted, I reeled out the major highlights from the president's speech yesterday morning. Do you think that the president did not actually touch the crux of, the protest? Do you agree with people who think that maybe
yes, I agree with them. I agree completely that in a lot of instances, the president deflected on the real issues. In fact, the president in his address, yes, he sounded more argumentative than persuasive. It was basically an attempt to justify all of his policies that are already being questioned by the protesters. Because again, if you read through the entire address, it was basically a repetition of the policies of the president and an attempt to justify why those policies meant well for ordinary Nigerians who are themselves already questioning and protesting against those policies. So there was no direct address of all of the issues that was raised by the protesters. Again, I think yesterday we did an extensive analysis of the speech of the president and the reactions to it, and for example, Sandra, let's just take one or two of those demands. There's quite a lot of demands out there, by different groups. But I think what we did on Political Roundtable yesterday was to aggregate some and create some form of convergence in thoughts and principles. And one of them, if you realize, if you notice, yes, there was the issue of reversal of this fuel subsidy policy of the government. Subsidy is gone. They want a reversal of that decision by the president, and it was not touched at all. The idea of subsidy removal, whether it was going to be reversed, and I also thought that there could have been a more detailed, analysis
on that
particular issue. Maybe the president talked about this and that. Basically what you had, yes, they were just more of the promises they were used to. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, this is going to happen. The specifics I was hoping to get about how to address the hardship in the land was not addressed. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
The president, I think, from day of inauguration, had addressed the nation like 4 or 5 times, if I get my details correct. But it's almost as if these speeches are edited and are just represented to Nigeria standard. It's almost the same thing over and over and over again. So I think that the president needs to again understand that reversing a decision or accepting to have made a mistake about a particular policy is not an indication that he's a weak leader. You understand? It is not even the reason why people think you are courageous. First, Sandra, for any correction to be made about a policy decision is to first accept that there was an error of judgment in making that decision. We need to ask ourselves, has the president agreed to start with that there was an error of judgment in taking the decision of removing subsidy the way he removed it? If we still have people around the president, and even the president and the presidency, thinking that there was nothing wrong in the way subsidy was removed, then we are going nowhere. We're not going to get anywhere with this conversation. So long as we continue to justify the removal of subsidy with fiat, without preparation, without consultations, without putting things in place to properly mitigate the effect of subsidy removal. You know, I read an article yesterday by a particular Olufason that was asking and questioning the kind of courage that took over the president on inauguration day. In the speech of the president, it was reported that what was written there was a failed removal of subsidy, Sandra. And that indeed, there were some things that would have been put in place before subsidy would have been removed, which a lot of the other presidential aspirants also agreed to. That look, yes, we are going to take off subsidy, but it was going to be a gradual process.
Which the president also agreed to some years ago.
In fact, it was even part of his manifesto. Page 37 of the renewed manifesto talked about first removal of subsidy. But how did it happen that, look, the president did something completely different? And even in France, like we discussed yesterday, he even said it at one of the meetings in France, that as he climbed the podium, something just took him over. There was a courage that cut into him and he took that decision. Sandra, nobody does that. No matter how you try to spin it, no matter how you try to justify it, you can't be taking a policy decision with far-reaching implications on the livelihood of the people, and you take such a decision with that level of recklessness. And when we said it at that time that, look, this decision has been taken without any proper plan, people were insulting us that we don't know what we're saying. Here we are now. What plans have we seen implemented properly to mitigate the effect and suffering of the people on this singular policy? I'm not even going to talk about that policy, Sandra. In the papers today now, the president is saying that, look, I have from the FAC allocations and what have you, I've given 570 billion naira to the state as grant to attend to the suffering in the land. So while the president was on this aggressive revenue drive, removing subsidy and what have you, so he thought he had angels at the state levels, right? You can see that even the president is frustrated with the state governor. And that's why people are saying that, look, this mistake is not supposed to come from a man with such an experience in the political space. From 1999 till date, he's a president has been politically active. In Lagos, he's held it down, produced governors after governor. So he should have known better. And so that's the question people are saying that, look, Mr. President, can you first admit that there was an error to start with? Can you first admit that there's a problem somewhere and then talk to how to practically and properly address those issues rather than deflecting on the issues and getting repetitive on the policies you have started to implement without any result? So basically, it was more argumentative, trying to justify the decision taken so far by this administration, which has yielded nothing but has brought untold hardship on the people. So there was really nothing for me other than, look, it was almost like a campaign mood, a repetition of what has been done before, without really addressing the concerns of Nigerians, especially the suffering Nigerians that are out there protesting against hardship in the country. It was a disappointing address for me, and I think the president could have done better. It was an opportunity for him to have been able to change the narrative. He didn't do that at all.
Well, thank you very much, Fuad. I still on the major headline on the front page of the Punch newspaper. I would now go to Vanguard because Vanguard also highlights the response or the reactions of different people to the president's to the president's broadcast. The major headline on the front page of Vanguard reads: Protest. Tinubu's broadcast fell short of expectations. Coming from organizers, coming from Atiku, Shoyinka, PDP, NLC, Dejajeyanju, Femi Falana, and others. And we have riders here that says protests continue in Lagos, Osun, Kano, and others. Tinubu's speech hollow and fails to address hardship among Nigerians. That's coming from Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. His broadcast didn't address police brutality against protesters. That's coming from Wole Shoyinka. Address economic contractions, NECA taxed the government. Truckers rubbish Tinubu's protest speech, say president bereft of ideas. So let's just quickly see, this seems to have, further details as regards, reactions and also one of the main organizers, one of the main organizers of the protest, Mr. Deji Adeyanju, described the broadcast by President Tinubu as a complete disaster. Also reacting to the president's broadcast, former vice president and presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) in the 2023 elections, Atiku Abubakar, dismissed the broadcast as a hollow speech devoid of solutions to the hardship facing Nigerians. He said the broadcast, intended to quell the fervor of public protest against his administration's poor governance, utterly missed the mark. Rather than do what it was supposed to do, he didn't get it. Deji Adeyanju went further to say that our expectations from the broadcast were so many that he spoke with political leaders at all levels. Politicians are now willing to make sacrifices because one day one of his administration, he asked Nigerians to make sacrifices and so many other things. The issue of fuel subsidy, electricity tariff was on the front burner, and many other things we're expecting to hear from the president. Unfortunately, none of these things were dealt with. Coordinator of the protest in Osun State, Ajala Adetunji, and his group, Coalition of Concerned Nigerian Citizens, said they would meet to discuss the way forward. But then he said the president was not specific on what the government would do to address the demands of the youth. The president's president's call for dialogue is an open-end appeal which does not have a clear indicator of what will be done. All right. Similarly, Mr. Emmanuel Olowu, Secretary Osun Coalition of Civil Societies, said the president's appeal for end to protest and dialogue will be discussed. But then he said, as far as the president's speech is concerned, he has not addressed our worries. But that notwithstanding, we'll converge later to discuss further. Continuing, on page 32, we also have here a lot of, reactions. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka faulted President Tinubu's national broadcast for not addressing the violent crackdown by security forces on protesters. That's another angle, that Professor Wole Soyinka is coming in from. So aside from whether or not he addressed the needs or the demands of the youth for the protest, the fact is that Professor Wole Soyinka is expressing concern over the president's omission of this critical issue. He said, and I quote, "I set my alarm clock for this morning to ensure I did not miss the president's impatiently awaited address. His outline of government's remedial action since inception aimed at warding off just such an outbreak will undoubtedly receive expert and sustained attention, both for effectiveness."
Take note of that word, remedial. Remedial.
Trying to remedy. Yes, trying to make corrections, trying to correct some things. Exactly.
So these policies could have been prevented if the proper plans have been put in place. So remedial is that, look, your policies have created a problem, there's a crisis, and you are now coming up with remedial solutions. Now, the remedial, in this instance, like the prof has said, we subjected to all manner of analysis, even though he didn't go deeper into all of that. Remedial is that there's a crisis, and these kinds of crises come when there's no proper planning, when processes are not thought through. Or you can go on with the process.
Well, he went further to say that his primary concern is the continuing deterioration of the state seizure of protest management, an area in which the president fell conspicuously short. Said quite a lot, but then as regards, I think about over 1,000 people had been arrested so far in relation to this protest. I think Femi Falana has mentioned that they should be released. They did not do anything except they have something that they're holding against them. But then also reacting to Tinubu's speech, the PDP described it as diversionary and insensitive to the plight of Nigerians. National Publicity Secretary Mr. Debo Olugunagba in the statement explained that the president failed to address the real issues bothering Nigerians, which is the high cost of living, especially the rising cost of food items and the volatility of the local currency against major currencies, which has made planning almost impossible. He said, and I quote, "PDP asserts that the speech by President Bola Tinubu over the ongoing protest in the country clearly confirms the APC administration's insensitivity towards Nigerians and the very precarious situation in the country. Also reacting to the broadcast, Chairman of Alliance on Surviving COVID-19 and Beyond, ASCAB, Mr. Femi Falana, SAN, charged the president to address the demands of the peaceful protest. He noted that the presidential speech delivered fell short of addressing the key demand of the protesters, which is reversal of the policy of withdrawal of fuel subsidy.
The key issue.
Falana, in a statement, also condemned the repression of peaceful protesters. He also called on the government to set up commissions of inquiry to bring justice to those responsible for the reckless killings. We also have here, in reaction to the broadcast, NLC, Nigeria Labour Congress, lamented that the president's speech did not address the anger of the protesters, especially the youth. One of the leaders of NLC said, and I quote, "We are completely disappointed with the president's speech. There was nothing concrete as usual. It was all about promises. Yes, the president heard the protesters or the youth loud and clear, but sadly, the president did not listen to their demands or pain." You know what's interesting about this one for me, for what stood out, is the fact that yes, he heard them, but did he listen? You know, there's a difference between.
Sandra,
he also went further. Fuad, sorry to cut you, but I just feel like we need to get what we found strange. That's still speaking. One of the leaders of the NLC saying what we found strange was the carefree attitude to the mood of the nation. The loss of irreparable lives, the anger, the hunger, and the frustration. No sign of empathy, but threats from the president. What do you think?
Again, yesterday, Pastor Curtis said something about the first 3 paragraphs of the president's speech, which sounded like, he was going to show more empathy and all of that. But afterwards, he started by saying, as a commander-in-chief, I have a duty to protect this, blah, 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 and then everything was lost at that point. Sandra, I've always told you about the theory of perception. The president has said, I've had you loud and clear. But when it comes to hearing, what are you hearing? It's one thing to say, I've heard you. But it's another thing, really, to hear with a mind to wanting to hear what you want to listen. Sometimes people hear just to argue with you or justify their own position.
Yeah.
I remember my grandfather would tell me that, look, are you informing me or you are consulting me? If you ask him a question or he says, are you just informing me? If you are informing me, it means you don't want my opinion. You already took a decision. But if you are consulting me, you are telling me this thing for me to give you an opinion as a suggestion that you are going to work on. So perception is key, Sandra. I always talk about attention, retention, and even the interpretation of what you are paying attention to. Because a lot of times, you see what you want to see. Even if your eyes are wide open and your ears are open, you will only hear what you want to hear and see what you want to see. So we need to ask the president, even in his hearing of the people loud and clear, what is his interpretation of what the people are telling him? Is he interpreting what the people are telling him to justify his own position, or is he listening to the people to look for a proper solution to their problem? Does he even first admit that there is a problem to start with? There can be an admittance in error, and there can be admittance to fixing a problem. And also we are saying that, look, the president must first agree that he took some wrong decision and is ready and humble enough to correct himself on those decisions. But in this part of the world, Sandra, leaders think that when they reverse a decision or go back on their way, they are seen as weakling. That, look, you insisting and staying on the decision, whether wrong or right, is a show of courage. And that's why some of the advisors will even tell them that, look, I know, God, no change. You'll be seen as a weakling. You can't do that. But no! The hallmark of leadership is you having the ability, having the strength to understand that, look, I made a wrong decision. Even there's no reason why leaders cannot even apologize. Why can't the president even apologize to Nigerians for taking out subsidy the way he did it? Yesterday, Sandra, for over 30 minutes, we read out the article written by the president in 2012 against the attempt by Goodluck Jonathan, the former president, to take out subsidy the way he has done it. Look at all of the things he wrote in that article, Sandra. Are they not the same exact opposite of what he wrote then, that he has done with his own decision to take out subsidy the way he has taken it, without any plan? The rolling around that we are seeing now, the policy somersault that we are seeing now, the obvious confusion in policy implementation to address the suffering in the land that has come out from the world of subsidy, obviously show that the president took out subsidy without any plans.
Well,
so where are we? And where are we going with this conversation?
In furtherance
and like Professor Iɣ said, people cannot be demanding for bread and miss hunger, and you give them bullet. Very unfortunate, Sandra.
And further to reactions, as regards reactions taken, from the president, or over as regards the president's address yesterday morning, we also have here Nigeria Employers Consultative Association (NECA) urged the federal government to urgently address the myriad of economic contradictions strangulating the private sector to enable the economy open up and return to the path of rapid growth. And reacting to the president's nationwide address, Adewale Smart Tʀᴇɪᴅs, that's the chief executive of NECA, said, and I quote, "With the current rate at which businesses are declaring losses, especially in the real sector, the nation might be in for another round of business shutdown." Following the protest and the national address by the president urging protesters to sheath their swords, NECA has joined the president to urge protesters to embrace dialogue, while also requesting government to urgently address the seeming economic contradictions strangulating the organized private sector. And finally, I also have here the National Association of Maritime Transport Operators (NANTOP) condemned the president's broadcast, saying the quality of his team cannot win the nation's battle against hardship. President of NAPTOP, Mr. Yinka Aroyan, said the president's message, it was obvious the president was disturbed by the protest, and he called on him to ensure that protesters killed by security operatives got justice. He also said the authors of the president's speech were oblivious of the reality of the situation in Nigeria, adding that the president did not talk about the unprofessional conduct of its security operatives that led to the loss of lives during the protest. He said, and I quote, "The president is disturbed by the protest. He recognizes the right to genuine protest. He condemned the violence in the protest and pleaded for withdrawal of protest. He ordered security operatives to be more active in protecting lives and properties. He listed his achievements. He pleaded for more time. We are in trouble. Honestly, the author of this is oblivious to the real situation in the country. Who killed people during the protest? Everybody that died during the protest was killed by the actions or inactions of law enforcement agents. One wonders why no aspect of the presidential speech mentioned the unprofessional conduct of some of the security operatives or group or individuals whose utterances and actions have the capability of fueling crisis, while the president has not denied the right to a peaceful protest." And I think that's also the major issue for Professor Wole Soyinka, as regards the fact that live bullets as state response to civic protest, that is a core issue. And he even mentioned the fact that even tear gas is even questionable in most circumstances. All right, and then certainly there was an abuse in situation, as clearly the protests were peaceful until some unfortunate incidents happened. So that's another angle to it. Fuad.
Sandra, at least we saw quite a whole lot. We had colleagues, we had correspondents across the country giving us reports, and also we also saw other media outfits also sending in feeds from the protest ground. In Abuja, it was unfortunate, really. Very, very unfortunate and condemnable. Again, it started with the FCT minister issuing threats, practical threats against protesters. Oh, there's no room for protest in Abuja, blah, blah, blah. Those things were going to heighten tension naturally. And eventually, the ex parte order. Again, we talk about the abuse of our court processing standards. Whether we like it or not, Sandra, in saving this democracy in Nigeria, we need to begin to question our institutions. And one of the institutions that we need to continue to question is the judiciary and the operations of our judicial officers in giving judgments and orders and all these ex parte orders that we keep seeing. There are clearly violations of the tenets and principles as enshrined in our constitution. Because there was a problem with all of these ex parte orders. Who do you serve it on, Sandra? And then I think one of the ex parte court orders even said, this order is being served on unidentified protesters. How do you serve an ex parte order for people that you can't even identify? And so you created that problem. And as of yesterday, Sandra, the ex parte order had restricted protesters in Abuja to the MK Abiola Stadium. As protesters were trying to gather at the MK Abiola Stadium yesterday, the police officers dispersed them with tear gas. In the same Abuja, Sandra, there were protesters. End bad governance protesters. Whereas there were also protesters, those ones, you know when you see VIP protesters, they came in buses,
yes, came in luxury buses with AC,
with air condition, everything. You know those ones are the VIP protesters, and you know how that could have happened. And then they wrote on their vest. Those ones wrote on their vest, "Say no to protest," whereas they were protesting. And so there was, so you see, the reality is this: we can continue to deceive ourselves, we can continue to live in denial, continue with all of this hypocrisy and what have you. We have a job to protect this democracy. And like Professor Wole rightly said, it was a major concern for him that, look, the president failed to address the high-handedness of the security operatives. We have to say this: not all the security operatives. We saw police officers who were brilliant. At least kudos should be given to the police force in Lagos. Very professional. Although you said that, look, the protesters made it easy for them, but they were also very professional. We need to admit that. Maybe until yesterday that we saw a police officer now telling the protesters that it's time to go. It's not in their face to tell the protesters to go. So far they were peaceful with their protest. And afterwards we now saw hoodlums attacking them. We need to ask ourselves, how do we really want to sustain, maintain, and develop this democracy? So a lot that we still have to unwrap as to what has happened and what is going to happen going forward. And that's why President guys even say that they won't tear that. We talked about water cannons, and we talked about batons, we talked about teasers, we talked about pepper spray, and there are different strategies too that could be used to restrict different scenarios.
Yes.
But not a situation where live bullets are used against protesters. That's why President again literally put it that, look, people cannot be demanding for bread and you give them what?
Live bullets. All right. Well, quite a lot was said as regards, the protest, but that's, all of this taken, of course, from Vanguard newspaper. Yes, across the papers, Punch and Vanguard. You can get it on Punch. It's on page 2 of the Punch newspaper and on pages 5 and 32 of Vanguard newspaper. That's as regards reactions of people to the president's broadcast. The fact that the president's broadcast fell short of expectations. And
I've seen people talking about minimum wage, even though we've asked them, what is the percentage of Nigerians that are civil servants that are going to get this minimum wage? And how do you know that the value of 30,000 naira as minimum wage, when when minimum wage was announced there under Buhari, is higher now than the value and the worth of 70,000 naira now. What 30,000 can buy then is far higher than what 70,000 can buy now. So you've even increased minimum wage, but what about the value and the worth of the minimum wage? What really can it do as compared to what 30,000 was doing at that time?
And the naira was stronger then, so
what are we saying? Well, if you put everything in dollars, if you try to dollarize the value of these things, you understand why the minimum wage does not really amount to anything really, because what really can 70,000 naira do now as compared to when it was 30,000 naira minimum wage? The value of the naira now, resulting from the way some of these policies were implemented. The inflation we have now is also tied to how subsidy was removed. It's also tied to the floating of the naira against the dollar. It's also tied to the aggressive revenue drive of the government. Those are the issues protesters were waiting for the president to address, which he deflected on.
All right. Thank you very much, Said Fuad. Time check right now is Punch newspaper. I have here hardship. States get 570 billion naira grant. So that is on page 31 of the Punch, and it says here that the federal government has released 570 billion naira to the 36 states to expand livelihood support to their citizens. He also reviewed that Nigeria spends 2 trillion naira monthly to import PMS, popularly called petrol, and AGO, automotive gas oil, otherwise known as diesel. Fuad, why is it easier for us to be a palliative dependent nation than a subsidy nation? Or why is it cheaper? Do you think it's cheaper for us to depend on palliatives than for us to depend on subsidy?
It's a brilliant question, Sandra. Brilliant question. You know, I said it the last time. We are happy to subsidize the price of rice, right? We are happy to give money, 570 billion, more revenue, share to the governor. Why not just leave the subsidy and work around the problem associated with subsidy, the corruption, and every other thing? And if truly we are all agreed that subsidy has to go, why not get more methodical about removing subsidy? Put tangible things on in place. One of the things the president also suggested when he was in opposition was that, look, before you remove subsidy, get your refineries working. At least let there be refineries that can guarantee self-sufficiency locally. So why can't the president? People are saying, oh, Buhari took it away. Oh, it was no longer in the budget. And I said that, look, have we not been seeing supplementary budget standard? Now the president also, when he came in, and even though it was not in the budget, in trying to be more methodical, so they could have been pushed through. They said, where is the money going to come from? Oh, where are all these monies coming from now? The monies we are throwing around, even to our governors, for palliative, that were wasting practically without any result. Look at the way you can see that all the governors are so quiet. The monies are coming, look at the ridiculousness we are having in Oyo State now. Even local government chairmen that the president is trying to free from the responsibility of the governor and say that no, they are loyal to the governor. In fact, they have told the president now that look, that's our money that is coming from federal allocation. Pay it to our governor to give it to us. You don't want it to pay us directly. Can you see where we are now? So that's why people are saying that look, the president who has been active in politics even before 1999, as far back as 1992, 93, he was elected a senator. So he understands the political space. He understands the orientation. He understands how the discipline our politicians are. Should have known better and be more methodical in addressing the issue of the economy than the way he has done it now. Now he's now telling people to go and meet their governors. Oh, he thought he had angels as governors before. Now he's now trying to look at ways to circumvent the constitution by looking at how to pay local government chairmen their money directly. It's not going to help because a lot of these people are still stooges of the governors by the sham elections that have brought them in. So we are still not solving any problem. So again, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here?
I mean, 570 billion. Well, there's so many things that we have spent money on in recent times for hard. From the, well, you say that the money is not like the money is there, but we've heard of 20. Look at that. And
whereas Nigerians are complaining of hunger, the 40,000 naira rice now, where is the rice now?
Where are they selling the rice?
Where is the rice? You say there's 40,000 naira rice, so everybody now has to wait for government to eat rice.
Well,
what if you don't like rice? Are they going to subsidize yam too and beans?
What? Conversion kits, CNG. I don't know, because, you know, also the Democracy Day speech, I think we also heard that, CNG. Yesterday,
CNG,
we have
even before Tinubu came in,
11 months of this administration. And here we are, you know, CNG conversation, distribution. What we have now is they're distributing 1 million kits, you know, to people. Where are the kits, and what's the delay as well on this?
You know what, Sandra? I will say some of these things in Yoruba. You will have to find a way to interpret.
Hey.
You see, Alagbara lo lemanshi.
How is that possible?
The person that has the opportunity to do something very easy to do, but fails to do it, would eventually find himself doing the very hard work that is completely unnecessary. Why can't we just fix our refineries, refine our petroleum products locally, ensure sufficiency in PMS and petroleum products, instead of all of this noise and nonsense about conversion and CNG that we are talking about? The world is even more. So you understand what I'm saying? And it touches to on it only goes to learn instead of it to solve problem of refining petroleum products locally, we started problem of conversion, looking for things up and down that will may take us another 10 years to resolve. Whereas there are low-hanging fruits that we can quickly solve and begin to solve our problems practically. You see the problem? Yes, the easiest one you would have been able to do, you left that one. You have gone to a more problematic one that in the next 10 years we'll still continue to talk about.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Fuad. I mentioned earlier we have run out of time. Well, that story is on page 31 of the Punch newspaper. Also on the front page of the Punch, very quickly, just passing by, public debt may hit 130 trillion naira by December. That's a report that's coming in, and the story is on page 32. We're currently at about 121 trillion naira. That's public debt profile at this time now, and there's a projection that it may get to 130 trillion naira, and we're still expecting a supplementary budget 2024, and we would now have about 4 different budgets running concurrently. But the story is on page 32. We also have here, marketers stop fuel supply and queues are resurfacing. That's on page 32 also of the Punch newspaper. Moving on very quickly now to Vanguard newspaper. I have the story here that is very important for us to just quickly look at, and that is this. Oh no, this is from Vanguard. Yes, yes, it's okay. What we have here is food inflation. Students groan on campuses. Just very quickly, Fuhad, let's look at this report.
Just take your story. Yeah, okay. just processing the article in the land. Yeah,
exactly. So what we have here is my son came home malnourished. I hardly recognized him, says a parent. Students are saying we're hungry and restless. Nap time, something has to be done. Nans, reintroduce subsidized meals for students. Look at that. Nail fund. Students can apply for upkeep allowance loan. Now, this is where I'm going to forward. This student loan scheme. So the money that is being disbursed is only school fees. Then you have to reapply again for allowance.
For upkeep. Wow. As a loan too.
As a loan
as
well.
The people that are talking about loan got free meals during their own time. If they didn't get it, their parents got it.
Yeah.
Yes. They got free meals.
Rather unfortunate.
But this time it has to be low. And you know there's no government, there's no money to do it. And if you look at the appropriations, 50-something billion for student loans, whereas the same government used 21 billion to renovate the house of just one person. 5 billion to do this, 5 billion to do that. 150 million interest. Yes, but for students, look at what was given. Whereas those are the futures. We're talking about the future of the country here. We are talking about massive investment in education to guarantee the future of the country. But when it comes to things like that, there's no money. You have to come to loan. And that's why some of the students are saying that, look, the hardship, even the cost of living now, what loan do you want us to get that will take care of the suffering in the land? They'll tell you there's no money. There's always no money for things like that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Saidfa. There's quite a lot to, look into as regards, conversations.
The plight of the students.
Yes, there's a lot to us to look into, but we have totally run out of time. But I won't leave until I read out the major headline on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, which is, of course, as regards the national broadcast. Outrage over rehash of old policies, threats, and failure to soothe protesters. That's the story on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. And also this really interesting one that broke yesterday. Council autonomy, or your local government chairman pull out of Algon to form a new association. They said they are totally comfortable with their money being sent to the state.
Their governor.
Please don't just leave us out of whatever fight it is that you people are doing. That's all 33 local council chairmen in Oyo State. They've left the Association of Local Government of Nigeria.
Sandra, what does this tell you?
The Supreme Court granted them financial.
Just 10 seconds, Sandra.
Yes.
If this local government that have said this, even if the federal government now pays the money directly to them, you know what they're going to do?
They'll send it back to the governor.
Kopari.
That's all. Very good. That's all. Thank you very much, Said Fuad. I don't know. I just feel like this is just like almost like a react or a repeat of the men who went to Ghana, Dobale for a certain.
That's why we in Ogun State, not starting now. They were cultural dance.
It's all right.
Yes, and they saw the song now.
It's okay for him.
They were begging him practically.
It's okay because when he came to Ogun State now, the energy is high. I see. Don't worry. It's fine.
It's not now. You're just saying it.
Thank you very much, Said Fuad. I mean, this just I think this just highlights the people that they are fasting for and they are drinking orange basically.
We've said it, Sandra, until we address the electoral process by which people are elected into the local government. This idea of trying to circumvent the constitution with the Supreme Court judgment will not solve any problem. Because you can see that about 20 states now, they are in a hurry to conduct local government elections. Basically to put people like these people of Oyo in those local government who will still be loyal to the governor than even their local people.
Have overshot our time.
Thank you.
We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll carry on with the conversation on Mainland Focus. This is Mainland 98.3 FM. We're just through with trends in the papers. Please stay tuned.